elements to making it happen, and giving you a viable digital reputation. Okay, I want to kind of wrap it up there because we've got some time for questions, I think. Do we have time for questions, Matt?
Yeah. So before we... I'd just like to do a couple from Twitter, Pete, before we go, and then we'll take some from the audience. But there's a couple of great questions here, and I love the interaction of social media. Yeah. And thank you. If you sorry, round of applause for Pete. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Actually, probably one of the main things I got from that, Pete, is that the future is here today, but it's just not widely distributed. Some of the things you're showing obviously are showing that the future is here, and there are examples of that where you can see it already, but it's just not everywhere at the moment, and that's probably one of the points.
No, ubiquity is the next phase. Yeah. There's no question. Yeah.
So I'll just go to a couple of questions here, and I loved how people ask questions to ask you and then other people answer them and you'll be asked. so that's great. But there was a couple of great questions that I saw here. Darryl Lynch asked, and I think with your background as a maths teacher, it's a perfect question. He asked about calculators, and his opinion was that effectively calculators in the schools meant that people forgot how to do basic mathematics because they were using a calculator all the time. And then Kim came in and said that smartphones, some people are calling them dumb phones because computers are doing almost everything for us. So do you have a comment on those couple of comments in terms of the ability for those machines to take away our ability to do things?
I guess what's happening is if I go back to where I started with a slide rule, giving away my age, and you look at the amount of information that was available to me here, and then I moved to the point where the amount of information that's available today, there's an exponential difference in that. So you virtually have to start here. The problem that teachers have is that this accelerating rate of change means that it's really difficult to train the students they have in front of them. And this is the challenge. I really find it confronting to be a teacher today. The amount of information that's available and the amount of information that's becoming available is increasing dramatically. And the problem that teachers have is, how do you teach for the unknown? How do you teach to put, for your students to have all the elements they need to occupy a job which hasn't been invented here, which will be available here. So it's a combination of all that information that they have to cover and know, and where we're going with jobs. So if you were a web developer 20 years ago, well, actually, you hardly had a job, right? But, like what was happening on the web 20 years ago compared to today. So the difficulty is, and then again, the other difficulty for teachers that I've spoken to, sorry, this is a long answer. The other difficulty with teachers I've spoken to is that they've grown up back here, and so their kind of realm of knowledge is really limited to what they grew up with. The students of today are growing up immersed in this technology. They understand it inherently without having to work with it. And you see, what's interesting about classrooms that I go into today is often the students are mentoring the teachers. When it comes to technology, that is absolutely happening. They know more than the teacher.
So the Generation C that you talked about.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, we saw a presentation yesterday from Anne-Marie Fernie, who was instrumental in getting the iTeach 21 Technology Training Centre in Dubbo, and part of that was trying to integrate IT or ICT into the general classroom, and that's a challenge for teachers, as you say.
It is a real challenge, and just because we have this huge amount of information that we now have easy access to. Previously you had to go into a library to access anywhere near this information, or like my parents, they brought the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah. And then the yearbooks, buy each yearbook each year, get the updates. But it's interesting, and I see the parallel as a bit of the Industrial Revolution. The technology, that the smartphones can take away some of the menial work and allow humans to take away or be more creative and do things that are much more interesting. So anyway, some good questions there. So happy to take some questions from the audience now. If anyone wants to stick their hands up, we've got some microphones there in the audience. Take some Some further questions? Can't see up the back there. Got some further questions? Down the front here, if we can get someone just with a microphone just down the front so everyone can hear the question.
Here comes your microphone.
And we might even turn the mic on if you like.
Thank you. James Davis. The equity and ubiquity issue that you raised yesterday in the panel session, do you think that still exists if we end up with a new political party that just goes to the no rather than the premise?
Okay, so can I give a personal opinion and take my shirt out of it? I think it's being called the Rolls-Royce solution, the fibre to the home, or the business. At some point in the future, if we go to the node, we're going to have to go to the home, to the business, to the hospital, to the school. So why not do it now? It's never going to be cheaper than right now. It's not going to get cheaper in the future. So in terms of doing that, what really concerns me is a combination of speeds and bandwidth. And you know, the fact that we can, we were told yesterday that they're already experimenting with a terabit a second in terms of speed, in terms of bandwidth. It's critical that we have, you know, with Cisco telling us that 90% of internet traffic is going to be video. We just need to do it, because otherwise we're going to constantly be catching up. I don't think that, and again, this is a personal opinion, I don't think wireless is the solution. I think wherever we can put in cable to that, to 92% is what we should be doing now. It is, I think, the best solution. It's just my personal opinion. But I think taking fibre to the node is a stopgap measure. It gives us a patchwork, and we're looking at a patchwork of technologies, some of which will integrate, some of which won't. So, you know, I think one system across the whole country at the same cost for everyone is the key way to go.
You just met the spokesperson for the Labor government in the upcoming election.
No.
It's a dangerous question, isn't it?
No.
A difficult one. From a technology perspective, though, I agree entirely. You've got the technology there, why not take advantage of it?
Yeah, look, I take the politics out of it. The biggest shame with the NBN is that it became politicised, it became political football. And I just wish that the politicians just leave it alone. Can I just make one more point? The one issue that keeps coming up is the cost. And if you know, the fact we've got to $91 billion, I don't know how we got there, but let's just go back to the cost. It's going to be about $2.5 billion a year to build it over 16 years. At the end of 16 years, it's sold off, and according to pundits, it'll garner more than the $38 billion that they're estimating it'll cost. And that money goes back to the Future Fund. So it goes back to us at the end of 16 years. So it's a 10-year build, 6 years operation, and then the money goes back into the Future Fund. And no one tells that story. You know, $2.5 billion on an absolutely essential infrastructure for Australia's future is not a lot of money to spend in a country like this.
Thanks, Pete. So another question down the front here, if we've got a microphone. You handed yours back to you, James. Yeah, okay. Just while that's running across there, I've got another one that's coming. Actually, a few people have asked about Pete's Twitter handle. Gadget Guy Site is your Twitter handle. So, and one quick one while we're getting the microphone across there. Someone said, what's your best tip, Pete, for social media use from a business perspective? Luke Cameron just asked the best tip for a social media perspective.
Like, really put together a strategy, a business plan, as if you were opening a new store, a new branch to your business. Having a business plan almost guarantees success.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Go down the front here.
I just have a problem with this whole idea that in 16 years we'll be able to sell it off and either get our money back or potentially make a profit. I mean, in your whole talk today, you've made a strong point that every second technology is changing exponentially, and in 16 years the changes in technology in terms of how we transmit information, the ability of the optic fibre to cope with the amount of traffic we might have in 16 years' time. Might we have a white elephant in 16 years' time that no one wants to buy?
No.
Sorry, just before you answer that, Peter, I appreciate the question. I don't want this to be all about the NBN and the argument about the technology. Obviously answer the question, but I mean, we've got this great advantage of having Pete here. Obviously, we don't want to get bogged down in just the NBN and the fibre versus copper. But yeah, sorry, Pete, take it away.
No, okay. Look, maybe you're right, but I would bet the farm on the fact that what we're talking about with fibre, first of all, is a pipe that carries information, and really, that basic infrastructure, like the electricity grid, that was built. It had a 50-year life, and it lasted 50 years. Copper has done us well for 50 years. From all the experts that I've spoken to, and I've met the engineer from Bell Labs that holds the patent for this, he still doesn't know what the theoretical top-out limit is for fibre. So essentially we're putting a pipe in place. If a new technology comes along, and we have to pull up the fibre, well then that's what we have to do. But really, everybody that I've spoken to that is intimately involved with the technology of the fibre tells us that there's 50 to 60 years in that.
Thanks,
And I actually believe them, so you don't have to.
Okay, one more question we've got time for before our morning tea break. We've got one more question out there. One more. That's just down the middle here. Nice and close to the microphone, that's good. And then keep those tweets coming through. Just before the lunch break, we'll have a free coffee and a prize given out for the best tweet. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Peter. Michael McGrath. Just to move off the NBN for a second and onto the consumer technology. 3D TV has been a big thing just lately. Is it just a flash in the pan, or can you see that that's actually going to be a more widely embraced consumer technology?
No. Look, I think the thing with 3D TV is now it's just become one of the list of features that every television has. A successful technology is based, and think about CD. We went from vinyl records to CD to DVD to Blu-ray, and in each case, what drove it, like the technology was almost flatline until there was content. And that was the missing ingredient. In each case, once the content arrived, sales went up. In fact, surprisingly, when you tell people that Blu-ray's uptake in Australia happened faster and at a higher volume than DVD, and DVD was at a faster volume than CD, there's that inertia with any technology, but the thing that's driven the technology in every case has been content. And the next phase in content, we were not going to see another optical media. There just won't be another optical media. It is about streaming the content. So, and its accessibility, the fact that I don't have to go down